This week we are discussing there's only one way to kill the Kripp virus, and that's with a little blood. They're not zombies. They're not infected. They're vampires.
Eat my
dog's flesh
out your mouth!
Every little thing is going to be alright due to plot armor, CGI vampire infected that barely show up in the movie because half the budget went to signing on Will Smith.
Shrek looks him straight in the eyes and says, "It's all over now."
I like Shrek.
A zombie outbreak where the zombies look like Michael Rooker and Woody Harrelson combined. Did you get the Paragon or Renegade ending? Well, it doesn't matter because Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan are working on a sequel to the original happy ending, and I am not discussing how things went with the original ending today. Everything was going pretty good for the single dude till a woman and child got involved, bumper copters, and the I Am Leg movie itself. This time around, we are telling you why you wouldn't survive I Am Legend's Krippin virus. Struggling to find a cure to the ever-deadly disease cancer, one Dr. Alice Krippin sought to repurposing measles, a highly contagious immunosuppressive virus, and attempted to have it infect and kill cancer cells within the body. Finding what seemed to be a 100% success rate in killing these cancer cells in over 10,000 human test subjects, Dr. Krippin skipped further clinical trials as society at large was ecstatic at the idea of the long-standing ailment finally having an answer, and for cancer to seemingly be cured. Military virologist Robert Neville discovered that the repurposed virus was rapidly mutating beyond conventional patterns in virology. Through undisclosed means, the virus had left the confines of its original laboratory, either via an escaped patient, an overzealous employee looking to sell the cure to a big pharma company for big bucks a la Dennis Nedry, or that the sheer transmission rate was not given enough precaution, and a lab assistant may have inhaled the disease unknowingly, much like the simian flu, which, in the movie, considering how all the military and science personnel that we see in the flashbacks were just not equipped enough. Before quarantining and prevention of further vaccinated could occur, the virus had already utilized the measles transmission vector to transfer through the air, and within a few weeks did the Krippin virus rock the world, and do we see the near extinction of mankind. In the span of only 3 years, most of the planet is but a barren wasteland with relics of mankind's legacy, overgrown by fauna and teeming with other life, as we see the condensed and focused case of Robert Neville as he periodically combs New York City for signs of other sentient life with his faithful companion Sam. Now, we aren't here to recap every single frame of the movie and detail Robert Neville's life throughout the film as the Omega Man, but he did show efforts as a military virologist to discern and find a cure for the virus in order to cure those that are still affected. Robert Neville had assumed most, if not every man, woman, and child was dead for many various reasons. Shortly after the initial outbreak, did the Earth's 6 billion human population in 2009, actually it's 6.8 billion according to Google, but you know, who's counting? The movie says 6 billion, we're just gonna go off percentages here anyway. Utilizing its origins from the measles virus to become a Super Saiyan version of itself. Did it not only attack the capillaries of our blood vessels, but even the aorta, eventually resulting in extreme internal hemorrhaging. Over the span of just 48 hours from initial infection, will blood vessels across the body burst, slowly forcing you to bleed out from the inside, and show visible signs of infection as blood drips down from your eyes, as you vomit copious amounts of blood with an extremely high fever of above 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Those that are infected will easily be able to spread the virus as they cough and sneeze uncontrollably, spewing infectious blood, saliva, snot, and air droplets to those nearby, with 9 out of 10 people nearby being easily prone to becoming infected. 5.4 billion people, or 90% of all Homo sapiens, had succumbed to the Krippin virus and died within a very short time frame. Despite there being a vaccine for measles right now, the Krippin virus's alterations allowed it to bypass all currently known vaccination methods. So, a vaccine to specifically counteract this man-made disease, as it became a sweeping pandemic, was not given enough time and research before those with the knowledge to counteract it were either infected and slowly dying, dead already, or transforming into something else. Of the remaining 10% of our population, those not given the death sentence by the Krippin virus would be placed into a genetic lottery of sorts. Only 12 million people globally are estimated to be completely immune, or in the very least, an asymptomatic carrier of the Krippin virus, coming to about 1 to 2% of us being completely immune. Having to pick up the pieces of a world ransacked by martial law and chaos of a dying population is already going to be hard enough in of itself. But a secondary threat will emerge and seek to wipe out the pure-blooded remnants of mankind. 8% of the population, despite not dying to the Krippin virus, would have it instead alter the body physically and mentally. The skin will turn and suffer from albinism, turning eggshell white. The pupils will become heavily dilated. All bodily hair will fall off, and the victim's gums will become inflamed as blood vessels are enlarged all over the body. Due to these symptoms, these 8%ers will be unable to be in direct contact with sunlight or high concentrations of light and UV light, as the albino skin, sensitive blood vessels, and heavily dilated pupils will basically be ruptured and burned when in direct contact, forcing them to seek out dark areas and only roam in the middle of the night or in shaded areas, giving them their moniker of dark seekers. Now, how could these vampire-like introverted sun avoiders be a threat to humanity's remnants if a little light is enough to keep them at bay? Well, for starters, the infection will work overtime on the body, but more so cause extreme distress on the brain, constantly forcing the body to suffer from that previously discussed body temperature of over 104 degrees, speeding up the body's metabolism and causing the Darkseeker's body to hyperventilate non-stop and accelerate their heart, while also enacting meningitis, leading to consistent migraines and overly violent aggression towards others. This consistent pain of being alive. And before you say, yo, that's so me though, but the extreme amounts of pain just caused by the virus would effectively give the body a net positive as they achieve non-stop adrenaline from this pain, boosting the recipient's strength and speed to nearly inhuman levels. In the same vein, they also have their sense of smell greatly enhanced in order to hunt uninfected prey and be able to detect the scent of sweat and blood from non-infected personnel. Now, this is the difference between the original and canon ending. Their minds will also be altered to the point that they will lose most, if not all, semblance of their former humanity. Due to their heightened metabolisms, they will voraciously hunt and eat the flesh of non-infected people and animals they can in the shadows of the dark. Despite being basically animalistic entities out in the wild, they do carry with them the know-how to efficiently hunt prey, relying on sheer numbers to overwhelm victims as they utilize their vast strength to break down offenses and defenses periodically and pretty swiftly. They can also scale vertical surfaces without any issue, getting up pretty damn fast, and they have the know-how to avoid gunfire when merely seeing a gun being drawn, and can at times outrun it. They can withstand direct explosions with minimal damage and numerous gunshot wounds until the tried and true fashion of shooting them in the head to finish them off. No matter the defense or obstacle, they will sit there and try and rip apart anything in their way, even suspending themselves in ceilings to dig through upper floors to come up from underneath you with no issue. They can even break down plexiglass, which can withstand forces of up to 10,000 psi and 7 times the resistance of ordinary glass, and can be eventually shattered by just one Darkseeker with a little persistence. Even being able to catch up to high-speed vehicles and tackle them, knocking them over, breaking through the glass without any issue, and retain the knowledge to rig up rather elaborate snare traps involving many kind of contraptions to set bait to capture and devour people and animals. The Darkseekers can also have alpha males, much like a herd of lions, where one specific Darkseeker with superior strength and intellect will command the horde of infected to do as he pleases to benefit the pack. With this in mind, it's safe to say that some dark seekers will have higher intelligence to others of their genetic cloth, and some can even use their time in the shadows to observe non-infected individuals during the day, figuring out the weaknesses of strongholds and the vulnerabilities of the people and animals to figure out their set patterns in order to set traps or ambushes. It's also very possible their ingenuity to set up traps was purely through observation, as the alpha darkseeker that witnessed its daughter being kidnapped by Robert Neville was able to set up a similar snare involving a car and pulley system once Will approached a mannequin he had been using to keep his sanity. So, if an intelligent darkseeker were to witness humans making rudimentary weapons, using guns, and more, it's safe to say they could probably pick up on using them just as well. If a darkseeker can do an intricate trap like this, they can easily pick up their deadliness factor in seeing to beating us to death with blunt objects, shooting us from afar, or using Molotovs or fire to burn down our safe havens to lure us out at night. This ability to adapt with their environment could see them not fearing the light as much if they were to learn to protect their bodies with dark clothing to move in the day freely, as even Robert Neville observed the Alpha willingly stepping into the light momentarily despite being burned by it. Yeah, if you think about it, if they started to wear dark enough clothing, sunglasses, and hell, maybe some super strong sunscreen, they could easily find themselves hunting during the day, giving non-infected people less of a chance to collect themselves before they are completely overwhelmed and devoured. Mammals can also be infected by the Krippin virus, although transmission to anything but a human must be done through bodily fluids, like a bite, as transmission through the air does not affect animals like dogs and rats. They have to be bitten in order to transfer the Krippin virus to anything but a human. Darkseekers will also infect mammals to use at their beck and call, as infected dogs will work together with Darkseekers to attack people, using their now rabies-like mindless aggression to ferociously slaughter those they hunt. You basically have attack dogs that are way more violent. Much like my discussion with All of Us Are Dead's Jonas virus, it is very possible that mammals like gorillas, bears, and lions could be altered and bitten to become ragged but dangerous soldiers for the Darkseekers, like the zombies of Army of the Dead, meaning, dependent on your area of our world, you could see to much more deadly opposition to your day-to-day survival. Now, there is a glimmer of Deus Ex Machina hope in the 2007 film, where Robert Neville was able to constantly capture and test on Darkseeker humans, as well as tons of rats, and concoct a serum that would extinguish the symptoms of the Krippin virus and supposedly revert Darkseekers back to normal human beings. While the probability of one man being able to do so in a townhome laboratory is next to impossible, I would not be holding out hope as you struggle to survive day to day only for some random person to show up with a vial of blood that's going to magically fix the pandemic that nearly wiped mankind off the face of the earth with barely any resources 3 years after the apocalypse began. That whole situation of the cure coming in last second before he died was just Hollywood World War Z feel-good stuff for the audience. But hey, it's, I guess, better than the original ending where Will Smith makes a truce with the Darkseekers and everyone is square because he gives them back his daughter and they just walk off into the sunset. If you want my full opinion on the plot elements and sins of the movie, check out my zombie sins on I Am Legend coming soon. But yeah, we are discussing the original ending. We're not going over the humanity of the Darkseekers apparently siding with the humans or siding with Will Smith. No. Anyways, so with the gist and rundown of everything that could kill you, let's just go over why you wouldn't survive this type of deadly pandemic and outbreak. That's why you're here, and I'm sure there's going to be a comment somewhere in there saying, why did it take this long to get here? We have to discuss the ins and outs of all the threats coming towards you. Now, in the beginning, let's just say a disease this easily transmittable getting out would be leagues more invasive than what we experienced in 2020. Instead of infected numbers trickling in day to day and week to week and month to month until we eventually realized that this was really going on, the Krippin virus would be at your front doorstep in a matter of days. While FDA and CDC regulations would want more clinical trials for long-term effects of this virus, test numbers of 10,000 people having cancer cured from their body would cause kind of a huge push to either release this sooner for higher level cancer patients or for the disease to leak out in some way as discussed earlier, despite more approval and tests being needed. Remember, Robert Neville discovered that there was mutations in the virus, but it had already gotten out of hand before anything could be done. When the virus does get out, no matter how well you quarantine yourself, a blend of mass evacuations, international hysteria, and stay-at-home orders would cause the virus to spread more easily as people flood to public places to scrounge for supplies, attempt to reach militarized zones hoping for safety, or just welcoming in people already infected and transmitting the virus with a 90% chance of fatality, as it's most likely going to be invading your body. Airborne viruses are seriously not something to fuck with, and all it takes is one unaware carrier to go to the wrong places and causing people to internally bleed out and spew their noxious fluids to other people in the span of only 48 hours. It would not take much. Having this kind of mortality rate in a short amount of time would have the masses in a panic, killing each other and stomping over one another, trying to put themselves and their families over others, despite probably already being infected and having the death clock taken away. To keep the movie PG-13, when someone is marked and thought to be infected, there would not be infected people surrounding the evacuation area near non-infected personnel. Considering the military would know that the virus was airborne at this point, people coughing and hacking up a storm nearby would not be risked, and most likely would have gunned down these infected people. And this is especially the case if the military already knows about the mutation that is the Darkseekers that are shown on some newspapers. So, if you even show signs of infection, you would probably be shot in the head and have your body burned on sight. Whether it's dying to your fellow man, dying to swift decision making of armed military efforts, or watching as the blood pools out from your eyes and mouth, you most likely will not be seeing the worlds that Robert Neville walked alone for so long. You will just be a name amongst the billions gone in no time. Now, if you somehow are within the 8% margin to have an anatomy that welcomes the Krippin virus as a squatter, you will live out the rest of your days becoming a white-skinned and hairless monster who must live each and every day suffering immeasurable pain all over your body from your brain basically trying not to implode itself. You may be stronger, more agile, and more tactical in your approach to everyday life, but having the advent of any high source of light searing and burning your flesh and bursting your blood vessels to the point that if you remain in the light long enough, you could die is a curse in itself. For me, personally, I consider losing who you are as a person and your personality and reverting to a near mindless, flesh-craving beast as basically you dying, as you and everything about you is eradicated. But if you don't consider that a death, then how about you dying to direct sunlight? And if you are able to stick to the darkness well enough, well, you're still gonna have an overactive metabolism that requires nutrition and food. And considering there's barely any food besides possibly some humans, dogs, and deers for you to eat on, this will lead to a long, slow, and gruesome death due to starvation and malnutrition. Because if you think about it, Darkseekers are just more powerful people demanding more from the body at all times, who are not allowed to attain vitamin D from the sun, as well as barely getting the nutrients needed to survive long-term as well, meaning that Darkseekers shouldn't be a threat years down the road, as they probably migrate and attempt to find new sources of food while sticking to the dark however they can, begging the question if they will eventually die off altogether if they cannot get far enough in their night cycles to find enough food to survive. The remnants of mankind are outnumbered by them by a huge margin, and if they are able to effectively kill us all and wipe us out, Darkseekers would eradicate one of their only food sources. And I really don't see them really upping their numbers by either further infecting people, because there's not that many people left and a lot of them are immune to the virus. And I don't see them having some sweet albino procreation, as sexual activity between Darksiders has not been observed and probably cannot occur due to the terrible strain that the Krippin virus has done to their bodies. You can see this eventuality of the Darkseekers' inevitable demise as a reason for humanity to survive, but that would mean you would have to outlast them. Do you really think you could outlast these creatures in any way? Now say you are the 2% of people that both does not die of the bloody symptoms of the Krippin virus, nor do you have your mind and body be turned into a flesh-craving albino roided-out freak, you must still find yourself in a situation to know the basics of survival. You will most likely be alone or in a small group of people before any notion of finding a sturdy and well-protected safe haven is possible. In the first few weeks, as mankind is largely killed off, you will not have large broadcasts detailing to you exactly what a Darkseeker is and what their ins and outs are. You won't have YouTube to tell you in-depth analysis vids on what to do about them and how to survive and beat them. You will have to, on your own observational terms, figure out Darkseekers cannot be in contact with light, and begin to set your scavenging routines for supplies and food during the daytime while avoiding going into dark areas like deep inside buildings, where they hibernate till the night comes. However, if you're in a large city or metropolitan area, a large majority of resources that you'll need to survive will be within darkened recesses of buildings, meaning you'll have to either sneak your way in during their hibernation and not cause sudden sounds or odors to alert them, be spotted by an alpha, or to go during night while they are out of these areas actively hunting to scrounge these supplies in the building that they were hibernating in and slyly make your way out, while also having to avoid any traps they have laid out during the night to go in our daily routines, like pitfalls that we may fall in so they could jump in, eat us alive, and crawl right back out. They could set so many different types of traps to catch us off guard versus what we could do to them. They have a bigger playground to work with in order to eat us alive. You will have to come to some of the exact same conclusions that the military virologist Robert Neville was able to understand and exact in his day-to-day routine, knowing the exact time of day down to the minute to maximize your supply gathering and get your ass home, defense building and planning for any eventuality, like bleaching the entry point of your safe haven and preventing any blood loss so as to not produce a scent for the Darkseekers to pick up on from far away and come rushing to you when the time is right. At some point though, some of these Darkseekers may become wise to your hideout and attempt to raid it, so you will need to have an electrical system set up to turn on high-powered light systems and deadly defenses to ward them off. However, even then, Darkseekers, if driven enough to eat or retrieve a captured Darkseeker, can push past the pain limitations of direct light long enough to destroy man-made sources of light. They can also use the pure sources of adrenaline to their advantage and take gunshots with relative ease to attack the prey they are so vehement to hunt down. They can adapt and evolve to whatever you may set up and throw at them, as they follow alphas and scope out your safe place to wait till the time is right. I don't think you'll be able to fend off a horde of these fast-moving, really hard to kill, and deadly reverted men and women. Remember, they outnumber us 9-1, so no matter your safe haven's numbers or what kind of weaponry you have at your disposal to mow them down, they and their toughened exterior, their high amounts of adrenaline, their way to sniff us out, they have so much in their genetic arsenal, you probably won't be making it as you are ripped apart and eaten alive. So, bottom line is the only way for you to survive is for you to be among the 2% of the world's population that is completely immune to the deadly symptoms of the Krippin virus or its transformative side effects, while also avoiding the numerous threats of a fearful intelligent species as it sinks into the brink of extinction from civilian chaos to military bombardments and mass executions. Surviving all of the initial chaos will mean you will have to find a good enough place to hold out with others that somehow are also immune or not affected yet by the virus to struggle to find rations to live off of for years, waiting for the Darkseekers to eventually die out. Which again, I don't see you doing that. You would have to survive in a nightly cycle of them trying to hunt you down with whatever you have at your disposal. It will become a battle of which branch of human evolution will starve to death, all while these factions of Homo sapiens actively seek to kill each other to come out on top. Remember, this is going to be a daily war of fighting each other and scrounging for whatever is left to eat among this apocalyptic new world. world. You aren't going to be able to live a life of solitary, casual luxury like Will Smith did in the movie, because, I mean, where are you going to find gas for a car and a generator 3 years into apocalypse? Most of the non-perishable foods will be very perishable about 3 years in as well, so him being able to find a lot of stuff, even bacon, as described in the movie, it's not going to be happening for you. And no, we're not going to have a happy ending here, because the chances of a cure to a disease that has been heavily altered in this man-made kind of way, when 90% of the population has already perished, isn't something I would hold out hope for, as real-life MacGuffins like that aren't really something that can happen so easily. So, unless you can survive all that time, survive all the Dark Seekers, and just not be one of the many people, the 90% of the population that died, you ain't getting through this. Bottom line. That about wraps up this legendary take on World War Z. Did you enjoy this dive into the dark? While you shouldn't be diving into the dark if you learned anything from today, should I have discussed the Dark Seekers and their attributes in the original ending where they have a more human side? What do you want to see covered next in the Why You Wouldn't Survive series? Let me know down in the comments below, or comment on my Twitter. I'll be having a Zombie Sins on I Am Legend coming out soon, and boy do I got some words to say. Want to give a quick shout out to those that support me on Patreon and as members of the YouTube channel to help keep me motivated as I slowly get back into the groove of making YouTube videos after my hiatus. Love you guys, remember to always stay happy, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay wow!